So thank you for the invitation. So today I'm going to talk about a work which has been done 80 meters from here in the next lab. And this is about anyons. And for the first time we show that it's possible to manipulate anyons with microwave photons. And we think that this is an important advance because this will allow the possibility to operate anyons in a time domain, and this offers new opportunity to test their properties. So this work has been done by Maël Kapfer, who did our PhD thesis on these topics, under the supervision of Priden Rouleau here, and with collaboration with people from Cambridge for the samples. Okay, so in fact, as a physicist, we all have learned at the kindergarten that if we permute two particles in a wave function, then this wave function should be unchanged or multiplied by -1, corresponding to bosons or fermions. In 1997, Lenas and Mirijn reconsidered these topics in 2 dimensions or lower dimension, and they show that in fact we can have any phase factor when we permute two particles in a wave function. This is not true in 3 dimensions and higher because of topological reason, and this is consistent with our common observation of particles which are either fermions or bosons. So later this problem has been reconsidered by Wilczek, and as this can give any possible statistics, Wilczek called this statistics anyonics, as any anyons. So it is interesting to realize that Microsoft is investing billions of dollars for manipulating anyons, and if you type anyons in the Microsoft stupid word software, then it will automatically change anyons into anyons like in chemistry. Like anyons in chemistry. The Y is changed into I. So do these anyons exist in real life? In fact, a hope occurred after the discovery of the fractional quantum Hall effect, when Laughlin proposed that to understand this discovery, the quantum Hall effect may be given by a ground state, as explained this morning by Jane, and which also fractional quasi-particles. For example, for a filling factor 1/3, which means that electrons fill, there are 3 quantum states that electrons can fill. Then an elementary excitation is to empty a quantum state or introduce a flux quantum, and this makes a hole which carry a charge 1/3 as electrons spread into 3 quantum states, and with a typical energy which is given by the electrostatic energy to create this hole of size equal to a flux quantum, and with a charge E/3, which is the gap of the excitation. So as Perrin suggested that this fractional quasi-particle could be a good candidate for anyons, and in fact this was shown by Arovas, Schrieffer and Wilczek, which considered the adiabatic swapping of two quasi-holes in the 2D space. And they found that if you move adiabatically these 2 quasi-holes, there is a Berry phase. And this Berry phase corresponds exactly to the anionic phase expected for anionic statistics. So, and for most filling factor, the wave function is a scalar. But it happens that for special filling factor, like the 5-half, psi can be a multi-component wave function, in which case, so this phase factor should be replaced by a unitary matrix. And it is well known that if you permute several particles, one have to multiply this unitary matrix. And then it's well known that multiplication of matrix is not commutative. And then this gives rise to a non-abelian statistics for these anyons. And this non-abelian anyons for the 5-half state are thought to be very important for possible application, elusive I think, of topological quantum computation. So is there real observation of the anionic statistics? I think the experimental answer is uncertain. Up to now, the only way to observe this anionic statistic is to look at DC transport interferometry. This has been done by several groups. So this is the principle. So as I will show you later, so the quasi-particle follow the edge of the sample in the fractional quantum Hall effects. So this corresponds to this red dashed line here. So this is possible using GET to pattern the edge of the sample, and then to realize what we call the Fabry-Perot interferometer. So for example, an electron is ejected here, a quasi-particle is ejected here. It can be reflected or transmitted, be reflected twice, be transmitted, or be directly transmitted, and all these paths interfere. This is like a Fabry-Perot interferometer in optics, but with a quasi-particle, with anyons. So the phase of the interference is given by the phase accumulated in the loop, which corresponds to the flux enclosed by the loop in the interferometer. If there are some anyons traps inside the loops, so when the quasi-particle will go through the loop, that they will encircle the anyons, and then this will add the extra phase, which will be a signature of the anyons. I think these experiments are very difficult, and their results are debated because of Coulomb interaction. For example, one can show that there is a Coulomb coupling between the anion trap here and the edge of the sample, which means that when there is an edge, there is a deformation of the edge, and then the phase of the quasi-particle also change in a non-trivial way, and this makes the interpretation very difficult. So in fact, what we think is that we have to find a different approach, and the approach we think should be very promising is to look at braiding interference based on Ongu-Mandel experiment with anyons. So Ongu-Mandel experiment is something that has been developed in optics. When we have a beam splitter, semi-transparent beam splitter, for example, and we send one photon and one photon here, and then these two photons mix in the beam splitter and then exit. And what is what has been found because of the Bose-Einstein statistics, that the two photons exit at the same port, either port 2 or port 1. So the idea is to repeat this with, we have repeated this recently in quantum conductor with fermions, with electrons, and then we have the answer of Fermi statistics. The idea is to repeat this with anyons. For example, consider the amplitude of probability to have, let's say, anion 1 here on the right and anion 2 on the left. So this can be due to the fact that we started with an anion 1 on the left and anion 2 on the right, and the amplitude of probability to cross this semi-transparent mirror is given by this. Here, this is the scattering matrix of the semi-transparent mirror. But we can have another possibility is to have anion 1 on the right and anion 2 on the left, and this is given by this amplitude of transmission for the two particles. And you see that this input amplitude is equal to this one times the phase factor, because we have to swap the particle position. And then this gives a direct measurement of the statistical angle for the probability to find in coincidence two particles. Because we have two possible braiding paths, then this derives information about the statistical phase. So, but in order to be complete, we think that this experiment should introduce the time, as has been done in the original Ongu-Mandel experiment. The idea is to send one particle at a time, and the other particle with a time shift tau, in such a way that if tau is very large, so the particles do not interfere, they have partitioned by the beam splitter independently, and this gives rise to this result with G2, which represents the overlap of the particle equal to 0, while if tau equals 0, so the two particles arrive at the same time, they maximally interfere, and we recover this formula. So we think that by controlling the times, it will be possible to have a very accurate answer about this term, cos theta, and eventually a measure of the size of the anions that we have injected. So in order to perform this experiment, what we need is to be able to realize single anion sources. And in order to do that, what we need is first to understand the dynamics of anions. And this is what I'm going to show, that we can have a good understanding of the microwave photon-assisted manipulation of anions. So this was the motivation. So this work will show that we can manipulate anions of charge E/3 or E/5 using microwaves with a well-defined photon-assisted process. So this validates the possibility to realize these single anion sources. And so the measurement will be based on the very useful tool, which is the shot noise. We found the shot noise gives much more information than just the conductance in this problem. We have much more information, and this is based on the photon-assisted shot noise. And the singularity of the photon-assisted shot noise gives evidence of a Josephson relation which relates the voltage and the frequency times the fractional charge. In fact, this is the first time that the Josephson relation is extended from the Cooper pair formula with E star equal to E to a fractional formula. This was this formula was predicted for photoassisted current in the frame of chiral Luttinger liquid by Wen in 1991. Okay, this is the outline of the talk. So I will first remind show some cartoon about edge states, and I will explain roughly what shot noise is in the fractional quantum Hall effect. And then I will present what we expect in the photon-assisted transport and how the shot noise can be affected by photon-assisted process and how the Josephson relation appear. And then I will show experimental result, and then I will conclude. So I think there has been a very nice introduction this morning by Janendra, so it's good for me because I have less work to do. And so if you consider 2D electrons like in this sample in perpendicular magnetic field, we know that the cyclotron motion of the electrons is quantized, and this corresponds to the kinetic energy of the electrons. This is quantized into Landau levels like this. So we can decompose the original coordinates of the electrons into a set of cyclotron motion, which is given by the red coordinates, and the center of the cyclotron orbit, given by the coordinate xy. And in fact, for each Landau level, there is a very Hodge degeneracy, which is the degeneracy to put electrons in the planes. We have putting electrons at different locations will not change the energy of the electrons. Then this divides the same energy. And we can show that because this coordinate in this transformation do not commute, that the number of possibility is given by the number of quantum flux in the plane, which means the degeneracy is equal to the number of quantum flux. And the ratio of the number of electrons divided by the number of quantum flux is the filling factor in the quantum Hall effect problem. Okay, so if I consider now a vertical strip of electrons, this means that I've been able to confine the electrons at the edge using some electrical potential. This electrical potential will bend the Landau level. They will eventually cross the Fermi energy here. And then, for example, in this situation, we have two Landau levels which are filled in the bulk, which means that in the bulk, the filling factor is 2. And the crossing of the two Landau levels gives rise to two quantum Hall edge channels. And these quantum Hall edge channels are chiral because we can show that the drift velocity of the cyclotron orbits is given by this. And no problem. Okay, it will disappear. Okay, and then these edge channels are chiral because the velocity change sign because of confinement electric field change sign on both sides. So, so I would say I have to say a word about shot noise. So, to simplify, I will consider two different situations. So, if you apply some gate above the two electron gas, one can deplete the electrons and eventually create a strong barrier which separates the left and right part of the 2D electron system. So, this barrier will offer a possibility for electrons to tunnel from left to right. And then, if I bias this this edge by voltage V, there is an incoming current which is given by E square V over H. And then this electron will eventually tunnel through the barrier, this giving rise to a tunnel current which is I. And because this is a Poissonian process, this will give rise to current fluctuation, whose spectral density of current fluctuation is given by 2EI. This is the Schottky formula, and with charge E, which corresponds to the charge of the carriers. There is another opposite situation where I relax the value of the gate voltage in such a way that there is only a small coupling between the upper edge and the lower edge, in such a way that this creates some mixing between the two edges. and then there will be a weak transfer of electron from the upper edge to the lower edge, given rise to a weak backscattering current with Poissonian statistics, in which case, in this situation, the shot noise that we measure for current fluctuation is given by the same relation, but now the current is replaced by the backscattering current. And in fact, it has been shown and demonstrated experimentally that in the intermediate regime for the integral quantum Hall effect, we have this formula which interpolates between the two situations and reflects the binomial statistics. Okay, so this can be extended in the fractional quantum Hall effect regime. So let's consider the regime for nu equal 1/3, where electrons fill 1/3 of the state. So we can start with a strong barrier regime. In that case, we do not expect to have a carrier crossing the barrier different from the bare electrons, because the barrier will lose the correlation of the fractional quantum Hall regime. And then we will recover the same result as before with the shot noise divided by 2EI, where E is the charge of the carrier. But on the other hand, if we consider the other situation where we create a weak coupling between the upper edge and the lower edge, then it is possible to have a transfer of fractional charge, over 3, and which will contribute to the backscattering current. And because we have now a Poissonian flow of fractional charge, this will give us a shot noise which is given by this. So this formula was predicted by this theoretician about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Okay. So in the experiment I'm going to talk about, we will not consider the 1/1 state, but the 2/5 James state, fractional quantum Hall effect. As this morning Janendra explained you, then there is a correspondence between this series of fractional state and the integer quantum Hall effect through the composite fermion picture. And for example, for the 2/5 states, so this is like nu equal 2 states, which means that you have 2 edge states. And then you have 2 fractional quantum Hall states, and these 2 fractional edge states can be observed by sweeping the gate voltage here and varying the coupling between the edge. For example, here this is a conductance trace, which measures the conductance between this part and this part. And we start with 0 gate voltage. There's no perturbation of the system, with completely fully transmitted edge states. We start with a conductance which is given by 2/5 E squared over h, that's 0.4. And then when we start to apply the negative voltage for, we have the reflection of the first of the inner edge states of the 2/5 state. And then we observe a plateau which corresponds to 1/3 E squared over h. And then if we increase further the gate voltage, then we go to 0 values to the pinch off. So these two plateaus signal the existence of these 2 fractional edge channels. And in the following, we will consider the weak backscattering regime of the 2/5 state, which corresponds to the B point here. And there we expect to have a weak backscattering of charge E over 5. And we will also consider the weak backscattering of this of the 1/3 state created here. And here we expect to have a backscattering of 1 over E over 3 charge.
What's the reason for 1/3 here? I missed the...
So this is something that we can understood by edge reconstruction. This is the simplest and a bit trivial way to understand this. The other way to understand that is based on composite fermions, and this is something I would like to discuss with Janendra when we have time. Okay, the best way to think is to consider that the gate will deplete the density of the electrons, and then when quickly reach the filling factor 1/3 locally, and there is a local formation of 1/3 state. Okay, then I have to say a few words about the photon-assisted transport. How do we understand this? And then I will present some consideration which may be applied not only to the fractional quantum Hall regime. Yes?
Have you done similar experiments at like 2/3?
Yes.
What happens? What do you plan? Just for the Hall?
Yes, for the weak backscattering of 2/3, we observe a charge 1/3 in the noise.
No, I meant as you,
Oh.
so here you go from 2/5 to 1/3.
Yes, we observe a plateau at 1/3.
2/3, you find similar plateaus as you...
we find a plateau at 1/3 at least, and the intermediate plateaus are not seen. It depends on the quality of the point contacts. I cannot give a general answer to this question. It's probably sample dependent. Okay. So, so I think what I'm going to talk about is valid for any type of charge. It could be 2E charge in a superconducting system, charge E for normal system, or fractional charge in a fractional quantum Hall effect. To start, I will consider two very weakly coupled conductors, the left and the right conductors. And so it could be, for example, a superconducting normal junction, tunnel junctions, where the transfer of charge 2E occurs because of the second order tunneling, which is also called the Andreev reflection, which allows the tunneling of Cooper charge from the superconducting to the normal system. It could be just a normal tunnel junction, or it could be the weak coupling between two fractional edge states here, in which case the charge that we will observe is a fractional charge in the quantum Hall effect. So then first consider the DC transport. So in the DC transport, so if you apply some electrochemical potential difference, which is given by this, and then I will have a weak transfer of the charge, and which will give me, as I already say, a shot noise which is given by the Poisson value 2E star IB. Okay, historically this shot noise was a mean to determine the fractional charge. This is some experiments that we done 20 years ago here, and which has been done also at Weizmann Institute at the same time. So what the shot noise looks like versus the DC voltage, so this is a typical trace. You see that there is at zero temperature there is a singularity of the shot noise at zero bias voltage. This singularity is rounded at finite temperature. So let's now consider what happens if you, in addition to the DC bias, we add a AC voltage to the contact. So this means that if I consider the Hamiltonian of the left reservoir, this Hamiltonian is changed by these terms, which means that all carrier will get an extra time-dependent phase, which is given by this. Or the wave function of all carriers will be multiplied by the same exponential factor here, that we can decompose into these Fourier components. And the Fourier components are the Floquet probability amplitude for photon absorption, for L photon absorption. This means that all carriers in the reservoir arriving at energy epsilon see their energy shifted by epsilon plus LHF with the amplitude probability given by PL. This means that if you look at some quantity describing the transport between the left and right side, we will find very simple relation. For example, the shot noise is given by this relation, where the photoassisted shot noise is just expressed as a function of the DC shot noise, where the voltage has been displaced by the quantity HF over E star. So this formula was derived for ordinary electrons, normal electrons, by Lezovic and Levitov in 1994. So if we consider this relation, you see that so the photoassisted shot noise is composed from a first component, which is the DC shot noise, weighted by the probability for electrons to not have absorbed photons, which is P naught square, plus the photoassisted shot noise displaced by the quantity HF over E star, which is due to this effect, and weighted by the probability P minus 1, and plus this quantity, which corresponds to this green trace, like this. So that the full shot noise looks like this. And this is what we are going to observe in the experiments. So to sum up, so because of the photoassisted process, everything looks like if the electrochemical potential of the conductor was shifted by quantity HF or minus HF, weighted by the probability amplitude P1 and probability P1 and P minus 1, and all different quantity will express like this. This is a very simple way to understand this formula. And this is the formula that we are going to check in the experiments. So, in fact, the photoassisted shot noise provide a way to measure the Josephson relation because you see the 0 bias angularity is shifted from 0 to this value or to this value. And the Josephson relation just tells us that the energy E star V equal HF means that this is actually carrier of charge E star which undergo photon-assisted transition, which means that if you observe this, we are able to manipulate this anion with photon-assisted transition. And this is, as a byproduct, this produces a new determination of the charge of anions. Okay, so then I will focus on the experimental result. I think we can time. So this is a typical sample that we use. So the nanolithography has been done here by Michael Fair. So here you can see the ohmic contact in which we will inject the DC voltage and the AC voltage. So here this is the quantum point contact, so the electron will follow the edge states, be eventually transmitted and reflected here. So to this contact one can measure the current fluctuations of the transmitted current, and to this one the bioscattering current and its current fluctuation. So the system is placed in a dilution refrigerator. This you can see here the dry 14 Tesla magnet, which is used for experiments. The base temperature is 13 millikelvin. And so this is the chip. So the yellow part represents metallic strip which are used to deliver to transmit the information to the center of the sample, which is here. For example, the radio frequency. So then we can inject a radio frequency, sine wave from 0 to 26 GHz on this contact. And we can add the DC bias on the contact. And on this contact, we can extract the bioscattering current and transmitted current information. This appears as voltage fluctuation, which are amplified by a cryogenic amplifier here. And then we can make the cross correlation of the current fluctuation. This provides a very nice way to measure the shot noise. So this is a cartoon of the experiment. So here we will work on the new equal 2/5 state in the bulk. And this is quantum point contact used to reflect the edge states, as seen by this Newton stress. And then we will focus on these 2 points A and B. I will start with point A, when the first, the inner edge channel of the 2/5 is fully reflected, and we induce a weak backscattering of the outer channels, where we expect to have a transfer of charge E/3. So let's start with the DC shot noise with no radio frequency. So we apply a DC bias, we measure the transmitted current, the backscattering current, and their fluctuation, and make the cross-correlation fluctuation. So these cross-correlation fluctuations are negative because of partitioning of the quasi-particles. And what I will plot is minus the cross-correlation fluctuation. This is this quantity. What we expect is to have this, that is the shot noise given by the 2 E star IB, so this is Schottky formula, and there is a correction due to the finite temperature, which involves also the fractional charge and the temperature. So this is a typical shot noise trace that you observe as a function of the DC voltage. Then we can measure the bioscattering current, and then we just plug the bioscattering current in this formula, assume that we have E/3 charge, and compare with the result. And we see that we again confirm the experiment done 20 years ago. So far, so good. And okay. So now the next step is to apply the radio frequency in addition to the DC bias. So this is what we do here. So when we apply the radio frequency, so in black is the DC shot noise with no radio frequency. The blue point corresponds to the effect of the radio frequency. We see that the noise increases. And then we can double the excitation. You see the noise increase further. Okay. And then this is what we have to compare to this formula in order to see.
Double what?
Sorry?
Sorry, you said you double something.
Yes, I double the excitation.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the amplitude of the AC excitation. Okay. Okay. Then the question is whether this data can be explained by this general formula. So in order to do that, we prefer to upload the data in another way by killing the non-photo-assisted part. I mean, the idea is to subtract to the observed photo-assisted shot noise the DC shot noise that we measure also, weighted by some quantity which correspond to exactly p0 square, the probability to have not absorbed any photons, provided we have a mean to decide what is a good p0. So in order to do that, we play with the data and vary p0 in such a way that to have a flat variation around zero bias here. So why a flat variation? Because now if I subtract to the curve the blue curve, then I'm left only with the two green curves. And you see that the excess noise should be the sum of these two green curves. And as the shot noise curves are symmetric and linear, you expect to have a flat variation between these two in this region. And this is our criterion. So by minimization procedure, so we cite the p0. On the other hand, in order to now compare with excess photo-assisted noise formula, which contains only the photo-assisted part, we have to know what is P1. But if you use the conservation of the probability, the Floquet probability, we know that the sum of the Floquet probability is equal to 1, assuming the two photons process are negligible. Then knowing P0, we can know P1. And then we can compare the data with this formula, as we know P1, and we know E star from DC shot noise measurements. And this is just a comparison, this is not a fit, and this is what we observe, and we see that this compares pretty well with the data. So this tells us that we are actually looking at the photo-assisted shot noise of fractional charge.
And if you change the value of the charge in the Josephson frequency, it changes a lot?
Wait a moment, I will show you data for that. Okay, and then what we can do is to not change the charge first, but change the frequency. So this is what we have done here. So in fact, you see from this that there is some threshold voltage, which is given by this. We scale with the frequency. Then this is what we have done here. So we start with 22 gigahertz. So here we have plot the scale of the DC voltage in Josephson's frequency scale, that is E/3 VDC over H. And you see that 22 gigahertz correspond to this blue arrow, and you see this correspond to the rising of the noise. And then if you change the excitation, now 17 gigahertz, you see that the noise starts to rise at a lower voltage, which corresponds to this arrow. And then you change again the frequency, then the noise starts to start at an even lower voltage, which corresponds to 10 gigahertz, which means that this relation scales well with the frequency, as expected. Okay, and then now we have a priori assumed that E star was equal to E/3 from DC shot noise measurement, but maybe it will not be the case. So then we left this E star free in the threshold voltage, and then try to find what is the E star which fits best the curves. And this gives us this a way to measure the charge here. This corresponds to this blue data with their error bar. And from this data, we can say that we measure E star equals 1/3.07 plus or minus 0.05 uncertainty. So now the next step is to change the charge. And this is the nice thing of the 2/5 state, that we have the two charge. Then we go to the B point, which corresponds to weak backscattering of the 2/5, where, as observed by Reznikov at the Weizmann in 1991, the DC shot noise gives charge E/5. So we first look at the DC shot noise. And so this corresponds to the black circle here. And then we can compare, as we know the backscattering current, we can compare with this relation. This corresponds to the dashed line. And we put charge E/5. We see that there is a very good agreement. So this means that 20 years after, we can confirm the result by Reznikov. I think this is a very interesting thing because science is expected to be reproducible. But because the race for very high publication, nobody tried to reproduce the very difficult experiment that someone have done first and published in Nature. And we feel guilty for that because we had all the tools to repeat the experiments of Rezikov, and then we repeat them only 20 years after because we have new motivation to do that. Okay, now we add AC voltage to the DC voltage to look at the photoassisted shot noise, and we see again a rise of the noise when you apply the AC bias, and if you increase the amplitude, then the noise increases. So again, in order to show that we have really photoassisted effect, then we'll kill the non-photoassisted part and find a region where a parameter P0 will give rise to the flat region here. So again, this provides a determination of P0 and then a determination of P1. And as we know what is the charge, we can compare this data with this formula, as P1 is known, E star is known. So there is no uncertainty left. And then we can compare the data with the red dashed line, and you see that there's a good agreement. Okay, then we can also vary the frequency with charge 1/5. And we also find a good scaling of the threshold voltage Vg as a function of the frequency. And again, we can also let the parameter E star free and try to measure the charge for different frequency. We found a charge which is well given by the 1/5 charge. Okay, so we have shown that abelian anyons with charge either 3 or either 5 can be manipulated by microwaves with well-defined photoassisted process. So this validates the possibility to realize single anyon sources for time-domain anyon braiding. And so the singularity and short noise give evidence of the Josephson relation for fractional charge predicted by Wen. So, as a perspective, I can spend a few minutes to explain you how we envisage to realize these anyon sources. So, our view is based on the voltage pulse sources. So, this is a work that we have realized several years ago, where we are able to inject single electrons by using a voltage pulse on the contact. And the idea is very naive and very simple. The idea is to put a voltage pulse on the contact. So because the Landauer formula, which is, here I consider a normal conductor, no fractional quantum Hall effect, the conductance is E squared over H. So from the Landauer formula, which is valid at all time, the voltage pulse corresponds to injection of current pulse in the conductor. And the integral of current pulse is given by, we tune the pulse such that the integral of current pulse is equal to charge E, which corresponds to this Faraday flux equal to Planck's quantum, or to a phase increment of the particle equal to 2 pi, exactly. So we can think to inject this periodically using sine wave pulse. This is very simple. We have all the tools to do that from the previous experiments. So we add a DC bias whose value is equal to the AC amplitude. And if VDC is equal to h nu, nu is a repetition frequency, then we inject periodically a single charge at the frequency nu in the system. So the problem is that when we do that, so the sine wave pulse have the bad property that they shake the Fermi sea both upward in energy and downward in energy. And we can show that one actually injects a charge E, but this charge is accompanied by neutral excitation, which correspond to these holes which are created here by the sine wave excitation. So then 4 years ago, we realized that we use a trick which was predicted by Levitov in 15 years ago, and that not to use sine wave periodic sine wave, but to use periodic Lorentzian pulse. And this Lorentzian pulse generates what is called a leviton. This is a minimal excitation test. So if you use Lorentzian pulse in such a way that the phase increment per particle is 2 pi, which corresponds to injected just a charge E in the system, then we can show that the Fermi C is check only in energy, is displaced energy only upward. That is, this corresponds to only to electron-like excitation with no holes. And then we create a minimal excitation state, which is just a single particle injected on top of the Fermi C and which propagate in the system. So the idea is to use such Lorentzian pulse for the fractional quantum Hall effect. So can one generate levitons in the fractional quantum Hall effect? And in fact, the question is interesting. So now I consider a fractional quantum Hall effect conductor with E star equal 1/3, for example. And then, so what we need is to have a phase increment equal to 2 pi, which means that E star VDT dt is equal to h. And if you input this in this conductance formula, we see that the charge injected is a charge E. So this means that if we want to inject a minimal excitation state in the fractional edge, the charge must be an integer charge, not a fractional charge. So this is bad news, in fact. Why, if you try to inject a fractional charge, it means that the phase increment will be the fraction of 2 pi, and then this will induce many Fourier components in the phase term, which give rise to electron and hole excitation. So, how to? So, in fact, this ICU was predicted by Ines Safi in 2014, and was calculated in fractional quantum Hall regime by Resch in 2016. So, how to circumvent this problem? This is our answer.
Can you define leviton again?
Okay, a leviton is a minimal excitation state. In such a way, so if you apply a voltage pulse on the contact, the idea is to inject a charge, which is, okay, let's consider a normal conductor, for example. The idea is to inject a charge, like this, such that this charge is not accompanied by the electron-hole pair excitations. And this is only possible if the effect of injecting the charge create a photon-assisted process in the Fermi C, which only rise up the Fermi C into higher energy, that is, which only create electron-like excitation, not all excitations. And then there is if we consider this with a sine wave, for example, you know the sine wave, the Fourier transform of sine wave is Bessel function, which has a spectrum which is correspond to both positive and negative energy, which means that the electrons will be displaced both in positive and negative energy direction, and then this creates both electrons and hole states. While if you use a Lorentzian pulse, one can show the spectrum is only leads only to a single psi band spectrum, only positive energy, and this gives rise to only electron-like excitations. In both cases, one have exactly injected the right charge, but we have here injected more excitation, and this is not a clean way to perform the experiment.
Again, about the leviton, so is the energy, how well defined is it the energy of the excitation?
The energy, typically, if you use a Lorentzian of width W, the energy of the leviton is H over W. We can calculate all this, and we can measure all this. Okay, so now I showed that we can only inject integer charge as a form of leviton in a fractional quantum Hall effect. So how to realize a single anion source? The SD is to use this device. So this use a quantum point contact. So the idea is to use a Lorentzian pulse on the contact, which generates a leviton of charge E, necessarily. And then this leviton will be sent to the quantum point contact in a weak backscattering regime in such a way that we guess, as in the case of the DC case, we have a transfer of fractional charge which will be backscattered, which means that the leviton should break into either 3 backscattered anyons and some exotic system, nobody knows what it is, which by charge conservation should carry a charge 2e/3. So this is what we plan to do in the next year. And I think this is very exciting thing because we enter a regime where nobody knows what will happen. And this is very exciting. So the nice thing of this, we expect that the anyons inherit from the time properties of the levitons, so they will be localized in time, well defined in time, which is good to perform Ongo-Mandel experiments. The bad thing is that there will be this will not be a deterministic source, but only a source with precedent statistics, because sometimes so this leviton will cross the quantum point contact and will not be broken by into ferratual charge. So, and then if you're having these two sources, we can envisage to realize Ongo-Mandel experiment with anyons. So we start with the anion source like this. We inject a leviton's charge E, which is backscattered into the charge E/3, and which is sent towards the point contact. And we realize the same with another anion source, with eventually a time shift tau. And this anion is goes to the quantum point contact. Then they will mix here in the quantum point contact, and then we'll measure the current fluctuations. And doing this, one expects that the current fluctuation as given by this, where theta stat is the statistical angle of the anyons. And this is not the next year, but the year after. We hope. And I think this setup, I realized after I've designed this one, that it was considered by this group for DC current source. But for DC current source, there is no time information, and it's much more difficult to extract something, at least theoretically. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. And, I'll be happy to Yes?
The statistics depends on whether they go clockwise or anti-clockwise. When you shoot them, is it the delta tau that will decide whether they go clockwise or anti-clockwise?
I think in this experiment we are not sensitive to the sign of theta. So I think there is no information on how the system is braided like this or like this. There is no information about this, just the angle, absolute value of the angle. In principle, with the chirality of the magnetic field, we may think a way to know the sign, but it's okay. I don't know how to do that. The connection with photoassisted noise? Oh yes, because now the connection is here. You see that if you use the Lorentzian pulse, so the key point is that is in the phase term. So if so the photoassisted shot noise is given by the PL square. So the only difference between a sine wave and a Lorentzian wave, for a sine wave we have PL non-zero for both L positive and L negative. This is just given by the Bessel functions, you know. While for Lorentzian pulse, that's the sign. For Lorentzian, we have PL equals 0 for L negative. So the same formula will hold for the photoassisted shot noise, and except that we have less term. But in fact, this gives rise to a signature in the noise. We can show that the noise is minimal when we have a levitons. This is something that we have demonstrated experimentally in the case of normal electrons in a 2D electron gas, not in fractional quantum regime. We can really distinguish the case of sine wave or Lorentzian wave just by looking at the noise and showing that the noise is minimal for Lorentzian pulse. The noise is minimal because there is a minimal number of excitations. Or if there is less excitation, there is less partitioning event, and then there is less current fluctuation, if you like. This is the physical meaning.
Naive question, but can you explain again what is this phase phi here, which integral is 2 pi?
I should have written it explicitly in the slide. This is just the phase, the time-dependent phase experienced by acquired by the electron which experience the AC potential.
Okay, there are other questions.
Okay, thank you.